a few more people maybe kind of coming in, filtering in, and we will catch them up. We're also recording this introduction so that all staff and community can see it, and then as well as if anybody couldn't make it tonight because of road conditions and weather, I'm going to work with those individuals between now and next week to kind of catch them up and keep them on track. I just want to start by thanking everybody for being here, especially with the inclement weather. It's a rough night to get out and about. It's been nice to hunker down the last couple days, and just appreciate seeing everybody here and you making the commitment to join and collaborate, contribute to this group. As we all, I think, know coming into it, this is not the most celebratory or exciting way to contribute to the district, but we very much appreciate your willingness to provide your feedback as we work through budget correction, a budget reduction, to provide that feedback and help us prioritize the different aspects of our budget. The other thing I'd like to start with is really just along those lines of this not being the most exciting way to contribute. There's not a person in the room today or in the district that wants to be here less than I do, facing the situation that we're in. Certainly when I stepped into the role of interim superintendent in July, this is not at all what I saw the year shaping up to be. My goal at that point, we'd obviously had some uncertainty, and the district had been facing some turmoil, and my goal from day one was to contribute, to build on positive relationships, move in a positive direction, really support the staff and students of Fairfield, make connections within the community, and just try to build on some consistency. Unfortunately, as the fall got started, we recognized a need to really focus in on our financial health, on our financial situation, and so here we are. So at the end of the day, as we work through this process, and I'll emphasize this several times, every staff member that we have that works in Fairfield Community School District is appreciated, and the work that they do is valued. This process does not speak anything to that, anything other than that reality and that truth. However, when we see the need to tighten our finances, that's why we're here, and that's the purpose for gathering this committee together to provide some feedback to help us along the way in that. I do want to start. I've got just an agenda today. I will say that typically I'm more of a very formalized presentation kind of person, slides and all of this, and I just think that what we're trying to accomplish through this process is all about people, and we are in the business of people. We serve people from the age of 3 preschoolers all the way up to, we have staff that are 73, 83, 93 at times, so we really support people throughout the entirety of their life, and so I'm really coming at the group tonight with a much more informal welcome and process, and really we're here tonight to understand the different aspects of our budget, for you all to be able to gather the information that you need to, at the end of the day, as we wrap up our second meeting next week, to be able to provide your feedback on the impact of our additional budget packages in comparison to each other. And we'll kind of walk through what the specifics of those processes look like. But I do want to welcome everybody and give everybody at the tables an opportunity to introduce yourself and talk about your role with the district, or introduce yourself and talk about your affiliation with different programs or buildings in the district. And I do have the list of participants, but we don't need to go in any, we'll just start with group one if you guys want to just share your name and your role, or your name and your affiliation as we welcome everybody to the group.
Jared Flynn, I'm a father of one student in high school and one that just recently graduated.
Jared Buzzer, I teach middle school phys ed and coach multiple sports in the district. Been here for, I think, 16, 17 years, something like that.
Marissa Bowen, I'm a second grade teacher at Pence. Angela Jones, Kim's principal and special ed director.
Carly Martin, Fairfield Middle School principal.
We'll go to Stable next.
Oh, Holly Harris, I'm the librarian at Washington.
Jennifer Clement, special ed teacher at Pence.
Alex Rubling, Associate Principal at the Middle School.
Dan Altsbrand, janitor at the middle school.
I'm Michelle Higgins, I'm a math teacher at Fairfield High School.
Justin Copeland, I've got 2 students in the district.
D. Pompey High School Principal.
Jessica Garchick, high school librarian.
I'm Jill Lane, I'm the parent of 2 high school students.
Bonnie Hilger, I've got a kindergartner and a 7th grader, so middle school and elementary.
Bruce Miller, I'm half-time tag, elementary, and I also teach a period of high school, so I'm at 3 buildings for that, and then half-time homeschool, so I'm at the middle school for that, and then I have 2 girls, one at Washington and one at Pence.
David Kramer, high school art teacher.
Marie Ryan, technology secretary.
Jeff Courtwright, Activities Director for the district.
Tina Townsend, Washington Elementary Principal.
Molly Mazinski, middle school counselor, and then a parent of 3 in the district.
Matt Guba, 3 soon to be 4 children in the district.
Tasha Stacy, high school special ed teacher, and I have 1 child in the district.
Christy Blonsky, I have a middle schooler and a high schooler.
Jen Larson, I also have students in the district.
And then around the kind of periphery of the group sitting at the tables, we also have several of our school board members here tonight. We have additional directors that will be here to help answer questions as we move through the process of reviewing each series of our budget packages. And although the board members are here and we have this posted as a public meeting, the public's welcome to attend. Just definitely want to emphasize that the board's not here for deliberation. It's not a board meeting, and so they're really here to observe the process. And so when we think about what that process really entails, I'll go back here. I'm going to walk us through several resources that are available, and I want to start with really the purpose of the group. And hopefully ease any feelings of nerves that anybody walking in may have. So as we look here at the purpose, those of you who have graciously volunteered to participate in the group, I want to really emphasize that your role is to offer input and to provide feedback to me, the superintendent, on our budget priorities. Then my role will be to take that feedback and use that to craft the initial recommendation that I take forward to the board of directors. And at the end of the day, the board will be responsible for determining what that reduction looks like, what packages, the total amount, and how many FTE or full-time equivalent employees that equates to. So I really want to emphasize here at the very beginning that the burden of determining what is reduced is not on the shoulders of the participants in this group. Ultimately, that is what the board is elected to do, and I know we have several new board members that are just beginning their role in service to the board, and that's probably, just like I spoke to at the beginning of the meeting, this wasn't what I was envisioning. It's also not what they were hoping to step into as new board members as well, and so we thank them for their service in making that very difficult decision, and that's ultimately why we want to gather as much feedback as we can from a wide range of perspectives. And so as you listened to those participants in our group share their connections with the district, hope it was very clear that we worked very hard to cultivate a group here that has a range of perspectives, students from various grade levels, employees from various job categories. And so we really are aiming to gather as much feedback from a range of perspectives. The next kind of thing I want to walk through is really the discussion about how did we get here, and so why are we here, and what needs to happen here moving forward, and kind of outline the steps that we're gonna engage in tonight. The focus of the group is really forward thinking, providing that feedback to inform the decision around a future reduction. But we didn't get here out of a just overnight either. And so I think it's important to share with you and with the public that could be watching later where you can go to get additional resources or information that we've really been focusing on all the way back since early October. So if you've been to the website recently, right on the main page of the website, you'll notice that we've added a district budget information page, and this really is housing everything related to this process for staff, for the community, for you all. So I've got a lot of things that I will flash up on the screen as we're kind of getting started today and that we might come back to as we're working. In the interim, between this week and next week, if questions come up, I would urge you to go here first, because your questions might be there, or the answers to your questions might be there. And then, of course, we'll talk multiple times about reaching out to me, and we've got a place here where you can ask questions on the website as well. So back to kind of framing our work tonight in how we are here, or why we are here, I would direct you to a couple resources that, again, these are all of this stuff's linked in that budget information page that I just directed you to. But very big picture, over the last several years, our enrollment has declined. And so as a public school in Iowa, our funding is determined by enrollment. And so when we have funds, when we have revenues, we spend them. And as we don't, we're now finding ourselves in a budget pinch, right? So we have fewer funds and we've got to make some adjustments. And from a very big picture perspective, there are fewer students attending Fairfield schools today than there were a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I think in some of the other information that we've put out there, you can kind of see that trend even back over the last 20 years since 2000. And we did discuss this more in depth at a previous board meeting. And again, that's not really our main focus tonight, but it does set the picture, the big picture, for why we're here and why we're reliant on this feedback that you're about to provide us to help guide us forward. I do want to emphasize again that really the committee, this is the definition of a working committee. The majority of the time that we are going to be spending together the rest of tonight and almost all of the time that we spend together next week is going to be digging into those budget packages that were sent to you earlier today. Those are also available on the website, and we're going to be giving you those in a packet or in a binder here shortly. And so that is going to be the focus and the emphasis of our work together. But I think it's helpful to kind of frame or to begin with the end in mind. Where is it that this process is headed? And so this is just, again, very big picture visual of this program-based budgeting and how it helps us make that determination of ultimately what to reduce. So you can see that we've got our general fund. That's the big green. That's all of the expenses that we have or that we pay for out of our general fund. And we split that into 3 different categories. And I'll have some definitions that I share with you or put up on the screen because I know this is a lot of information to take into right at the beginning of the night. But essentially, there's 3 different categories. We have our core packages that you'll see in your binder. And those represent all of the things that we have to do as a district, either by law, by board policy, or to ensure the function of providing education to students day in and day out. So there's not an Iowa code that says you have to have a custodian or an Iowa code that says you have to have a secretary, but we know that to run and operate our buildings and to provide school day in and day out, that we have to have secretaries and we have to have custodians. We also know that board policy outlines the target class sizes that we have, and Chapter 12 that we'll show you a link to here in just a little bit. That's straight from the Iowa Code, outlines the programming that we have to offer and provide to students in kindergarten through 12th grade. The second type of package that you'll see is classified as categorical. Our categorical packages are packages that have a funding stream tied specifically to them. I would also emphasize that those categorical packages are also enrollment driven as well, and so our categorical funds have decreased over time as our enrollment has decreased as well. Examples of categorical funds are things like preschool, things like tag, things like homeschool. They are dollars that are earmarked for specific programs. I will say that with a slight caveat because over time, the legislature changes guidance on some of these different categoricals. And so at times they have been very tight and restrictive, and you can only use it on this, and we've had a lot of accountability in our at-risk dollars, let's say. Over the last several years, those have become more flexible. The same would happen with our TLC, our Teacher Leadership and Compensation. That's a program that's probably been in the mix for maybe 8 to 10 years. And so originally it was tight to supporting teacher leadership and compensation. There were requirements around that. In the legislative session last year, those requirements were changed significantly. And so there is some gray operating in that categorical component of our packages just because of the changes that we make and are reacting to within legislative guidance. Then the packages, the budget packages that we will ultimately be ranking or providing the most direct feedback on are the packages that you'll see classified as additional. And additional means that they don't fit in these other two. And so at the end of the day, when we get to once we've reviewed all 900 series of budget packages, we will then shift, and we've gotten a comprehensive understanding of the cost of different programs, the cost of different personnel. We will be looking at making the reduction out of those additional packages. So by the end of our time next week, we'll be using a kind of forced prioritization, a matrix that will literally line up every choice in those additional packages to say, not do I like this or not like this, or do I value this or not value this, but I'm going to really challenge you to think about the impact that reducing this versus this would have on the overall experience of our students in Fairfield schools.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
As we go through this, how much do you want us, if at all, thinking about like future proofing? Like, is this a one-year exercise? Do we value for 2024, or are we thinking like over the next decade, so this isn't a repeated every year group?
Great question. So if you couldn't hear the question, Matt's question is revolving around, is this a one-time process? Are we focused solely on preparing for the 24-25 school year, or is it a longer-term process? And I would emphasize, to answer that question, that it is a little bit of both. We have the very pressing issue or matter of working towards a reduction for the here and now in preparation for the 24-25 school year, and keeping our financial health within board policy. However, this really is a long-range planning process or initiative that we will use repeatedly. So there was a lot of work, and I want to thank the administrators and the directors who are here tonight. The amount of work and effort that went into getting these budget packages ready for tonight, they did that in a very short amount of time, and if you looked through that at all today, it's extremely comprehensive, and the justifications and the descriptions are very well thought out. We initially thought we would try to have that done a couple months from now, and then as things began to kind of take shape in November, late October, November, the process just became more urgent. And so I want to applaud them, thank them for the work that they did. They got together on several different afternoons to work through those, did work on their own, edited each other's, gave feedback that way. So we would not be here without the collective effort of the leadership team, across the district. To go back to the question about then long term, now that we have a lot of these budget packages created, it's something that we can update more regularly as changes occur. So when we really think about expanding and tightening, going back to that idea that when we have funds, so like over the last several years, we have had additional, what I would consider categorical money with COVID dollars, or ESSER, if you're familiar with those acronyms, and we've got some glossaries and stuff to help through that later today. So when we had money, when we had those, it's important for us to spend it. We are, again, back in the business of people. We're providing education to our students, and we want to provide the best learning experience possible. And in a perfect world, every dollar we get in revenue, we would expense back out to the benefit of our students. Now, as we have less money, we have to make that correction. So a roundabout answer to say it's both, and so that is part of the balance that we're going to have to work through as well. Real quick, another graphic to just emphasize how this process builds to a decision. We have, like I said, the administrative team diligently worked through writing those packages. We've developed this committee that's made up of both staff and parents. Right now, what we're doing here in the Budget Prioritization Committee is to review these packages and then ultimately provide that feedback through that forced prioritization. At the same time, our administrators will be doing the same activity that this group will do, that will then get us, or get me, the feedback to craft that original recommendation. So there'll be lots of conversation about the impact of reducing each and every additional package. You will see that there are a lot of things in there that maybe come from the same program or area, and just because something's in there as an additional package, and we've had this conversation staff-wise as well, does not mean that that's not a for sure that that's going to be reduced at this point. It really is about providing that opportunity for prioritization. So two very similar jobs, or jobs that are coming from the same department or the same program, might both be in an additional package, and then at the end of the day, both of those might not be able to be reduced because of the impact that losing both of those would have on the overall system. So just some things to keep in mind. Then at that time, I would share that recommendation with the board, and they will have their opportunities to ask questions, to deliberate, to seek that clarification and understand the impact of reducing those different packages before they ultimately say, yep, this is the direction that we're going to go, and these are the budget packages that would be reduced. I think right now would be a good time. I know we had the one question. If there are other questions about what's led to today, about what the charge of the group is moving forward, I would love to take those questions at this point before we start handing out the actual binders and kind of working through the first steps in the process.
Do we have a number in mind that we're wanting to say this is how much we need to cut?
Yes, so the target reduction as directed by the board is $1 million, and they reached that number kind of backwards by looking at the board policies that we have in place around our financial health indicators. Our unspent balance, our solvency ratio are two significant ones, and so in our board policy 705, actually I was expecting that question, so I have this, 701.05, it outlines that we would have a UAB in our regular program budget at a minimum of 15%, and then our solvency ratio we're trying to keep above 8%. That's in line with recommended parameters for both of those indicators, and so then working backwards to say we use that projection model, which again, all of this is available in those links. So because we're funded year to year, there is some reactivity that we're waiting on a lot of information. So the legislative session just started. A lot of things were announced last night as initiatives. Those will all have impacts. And so there is kind of a give and take And as the process goes through, we have requirements on when to certify our budget for the next year. And so all of that has been kind of shaping the timeline, why we're here now, and why the number is, what the number is. And I think that goes back to the question that Matt asked about, certainly, nobody wants to do this repeatedly. And when we think about this process versus other processes, there would be an opportunity, or some districts might go about this differently. This is not the only way that districts work through a budget reduction. Other options would be to just rip the Band-Aid and gather our administrative and our leadership team and get together and say, here's what we're going to do, and move that forward to the board. I personally like this process better because it allows for the opportunity to communicate every step along the way. We are gathering intentionally the feedback and input from a range of perspectives to help us make that decision. And I'll steal an example from Pella, who happens to be going through this exact same process, almost at the exact same timeline that we are there. They just finished their meeting 3 on Monday, and so we're at meeting 1 now. They're actually looking to reduce almost the same amount that we are. And so their superintendent, we've been working closely with him, very much appreciate his collaboration and support. He's been through this several times. He's been a superintendent for 23, 24 years, used this process 5 or 6 different times. And he gives the example that in a previous time of cutting back, that he had ideas of what would probably be a lower priority, and that if he were going to decide on his own, that he would cut this specific package. Through this process, that thing that he thought would be easy to get rid of actually came out in the 2 different groups, with the administrators and with the committee, as the number 1 priority. And so at the end of the day, I won't go through the prioritization. For me, it's about listening and gathering that feedback and thinking about the impact that those different reductions might have to be able to move that recommendation forward. At the end of the day, I want to support the board in moving towards their goal and their direction of reducing our expenses by $1 million. So roundabout, kind of getting back to both of those questions. Anybody else have any clarification?
Sorry, you're all gonna hate me in 3 weeks. I apologize in advance, I have a lot of questions. Is the goal, and part of my ignorance of still learning on budgets and how it all works, but is your goal to end with like a surplus so you can smooth out the ride through ups and downs of enrollment? Or are you trying to spend every penny every year because we lose it if we don't use it?
So going back to the unspent balance, in theory, yes. We want to maximize every dollar that we get because we get those dollars to support our students. However, things change significantly from year to year. Our supplemental state aid, that's new money that's that we get hopefully each year to account for rising costs. We don't know what that is until here in the next month. So to say that we would have our revenues would exactly match our expenditures every single year, that would be risky. That's why we have that board policy to kind of guide us to that 15% to 20%. That would account for changes in enrollment, changes in funding. And so that does provide the cushion. And then, there's just an ebb and flow there, depending on needs. For example, if we have a group of students that move in that have ELL needs. So they're English language learners and they move in the middle of the year. If we had accounted for all of those dollars, if we've already spent all of the categorical money earmarked for that, then we're going to run into a situation where how do we provide them the support that they need? So there does need to be some cushion, some savings, and that's what the board policy kind of guides us to.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so as I mentioned, the purpose here, this is a working committee. We've got a lot of work to dig into tonight. We're going to take just a second to pass out the binders to everybody, and then we'll kind of walk through what those steps are going to look like. So we'll get these going here real quick. That'd be great.
Everybody get one?
Everybody get
Yeah. You get it roomed up?
Not yet.
Get into next one.
Yeah, we do.
All the time, constantly.
What's that? I'm trying to. I'll find it eventually. It's always the last place you look.
Okay, so before you go digging in there too far and get going, I want to kind of frame the work for everybody so we're all going in with the same understanding and kind of the objective as we work through the different packages tonight. So as you go ahead and open it up, the first page that you'll find in the binder are some examples of a framework that you might use as you go through the different packages. So undoubtedly, every single one of us, myself included, or when I mentioned Greg before, like we all have our own perspective, we all have our own passions or interests, we all have our own connections to the district in different ways, and that will come through in our individual rankings of the different packages. What I really want to challenge you to consider and to invest in is that you apply that same thinking about the impact of each package as you go through. So there will certainly be areas of the system that you're more familiar with, or budget packages that you read and review and you're like, yep, I totally get what that means. That's something I really want to advocate for. That's probably going to show up in your forced matrix prioritization as we get there. But I would really challenge you, really asking for your help to apply that same level of commitment and thoughtfulness to all of those packages. And so some of those are just examples of a way to guide your reflection as you work through those different packages. If none of those speak to you, by all means, kind of reflect before you get started as to what are you going to focus on, and what's going to be the consistent part of your review of all the different packages, so that you're not looking at the 100 series with this lens and the 300 series with this lens or with this hat on or that hat on, but trying to review those packages consistently. If you flip the page, then that just provides a glossary. I've set an ambitious goal tonight that we would work through the 100, 200, 300, and 400 series. Those are the educational programs in our 4 attendance centers. We have principals here to help us answer those questions. And as you go through the individual pages, you'll notice that I think this is a lot easier way to look at these different budget packages than it was in the spreadsheet. And there is a place for you to take notes at the bottom. You'll also notice that you have Post-its at your table, and we've got the large stickies up here that as you're working through, you're having conversations at your table. We need some clarification on what are the responsibilities in this position? What impact would it have if this position were to go away? Rather than stop to answer individual questions throughout the entire time, for efficiency, let's write those on the sticky note, bring those sticky notes up here, then while you're working, I will be reviewing these and going to the people who have helped write those packages to help give us the answer to those questions by the time we leave today. If there are questions that are asked that we don't know the answer to, that's likely, we would be able to gather that information, bring those responses, those answers back to you to start the meeting next week. You'll notice at the table there are a couple of handouts that we printed off today that I think, especially in these beginning packages, will be helpful. They have to do with our current number of served students in each grade. So you'll start to see in these budget packages very early on that we're referencing a specific board policy on class size frequently. So I thought it would be helpful for you to be able to see what those class sizes currently are. Keep in mind that this is as of January 5th. It's always a changing number, and you'd have to shift that down a grade to apply to what you're reviewing, because the packages that you're reviewing right now are for the 24-25 school year. So when you look here and you see that third grade has 107 students, that's going to be next year's fourth grade class. So when you get into the fourth grade explanations in those budget packages, you're looking at the handout saying, okay, I'm thinking about 107 students. The other handout that you have at your table, like I said, that's just an educational glossary. If you're not familiar with education, we are like the system that likes acronyms more than any other system, and so everything has abbreviations, and that's by no means a comprehensive list. So if that's one of your questions, every table has some educators at it too that should be able to help with that, and we can add those to our sticky notes as well. A couple other things to consider would just be chapter 12. That is linked. It's very difficult. It's not something that's easy to print off because it's a front and back page, like 60-page document. So you can search for that. It is linked on the website, but that is the IO code that references or outlines everything that we're required to provide. So when you see in those descriptors per chapter 12, that's really what it's referencing, and there is a place to go and confirm that if you need to do that. Last consideration, so when you think about some of the justifications and the descriptions and the justifications, you may see some reference to schools of comparable size, districts of comparable size. We listed what our comparable schools are by 10 up, 10 down in enrollment, as well as including our conference schools. So while the administrators were writing those packages, they were looking at our own needs, what we have traditionally offered, taught, but then also looking at how our schools of comparable size serving students. So definitely not the end-all be-all, but it is an important piece of information that the administrative team, the leadership team used to help craft those descriptions and justifications for each package. Any questions on the process before we dig in? So I think I allotted about 20 minutes, give or take. That would give us some time to wrap up at the end and kind of set the stage for next week. So if you're kind of trying to watch the clock and stay on track to get through the 100, 200, 300, 400 series, it's about 20 minutes for each one. And so I would give you the time. Please take breaks as needed. We'll stop here. I'll remind everybody in 30 or 40 minutes if you need to take a break. We do have some water and cookies. If you're not familiar logistically with the building, if you are needing a ladies' restroom, it's out this way to the right and around the hall, around the corner. If you're looking for the men's restroom, it's down the hallway to the left, around the corner that way. I'm happy to help you get directed there. So we'll take a planned break, or I'll remind everybody here in 30 or 40 minutes, like get up and stretch. And as you're going through and you're reading and you're having those conversations, raise your hand. I'll be happy to come around. We've got lots of help here as well to help clarify any questions that you have, and then the sticky notes as well. So as you're going through, you can do it as a table, you can do it as an individual, you can do it as both. Bring those sticky notes up here so that we can finish our time today by providing that clarification. All right, thank you. Off to work we go.